Welcome everyone in the next session of the interaction of the land use in transportation. This is the lecture number 2. In that specific session, we will try to understand the role of space in time within the land use and human settlement. As you people are maybe aware of that the interaction between land use and transportation is actually the complex, complicated, multi-faced, as well as the dynamic phenomenon. Land use development influences transportation related decisions as well as the behavior. It also influences that when, where, and how the land in human development will take place. That specific session will explain through different case studies. And within that specific session, I will try to explain that how the vision can change the concept of the development in shaping any city or any country, and how the size over time reflect and affect the land and human settlement. That is the typical example from Amsterdam, uh, that how the spaces uh, are are expended versus the time. So this is the example from 1930. As you can see here, the human and land settlement were only at the center. Very few people were actually living in the outskirt area. But exactly after 30 years, as you can see here, the same city center were expanded within its region, and another city center were also built due to the land and human settlement. And those people who were actually living in the outskirts, so they also start their own, you can call them mini city center. And then in 1975, the same, if you compare it exactly after 15 years, so instead of two city center, it is now divided in almost four city center. But exactly after almost 60 years, as you can see here, the Amsterdam city were changed to almost 14 to 16 small city centers. So now what is the concept to bring that specific slide, or why I'm telling you that how the land in human settlement take place? Because we are trying to relate the same concept of the human settlement to the need of transportation. When we will build more transportation, of course we will need more land, and the human settlement will again take place exactly at the same transportation link or the lines. This is the example from Munich city, which is located in Bavaria, Germany. As you can see here, in 1800, the population were exactly here, but exactly after 50 years, the same city center were almost divided to like three places, one, two, and three. But after 100 years, the same city were almost divided in like many ways and almost to like all the four sides. As you can see here, the current situation, Munich is divided almost to like 70 kilometers square area within that specific region. So now is a transportation planner. What we need to, what is demand from those people, that how we can facilitate and fulfill their demand, because what we are trying to do, that those people should not go towards their own personal car. So now as a transportation planner, this is again our challenge, that how we are going to meet their demand and facilitate those people. This is the typical example. You can see here in Munich city, that how the Munich city will look like before railway station. Okay, when the S-Bahn planning was started, so this is the S-Bahn planning city was somehow look like that, like those outskirts. In 1972, during the Olympic, Before even the Olympic, Munich have introduced the Schnellbahn. Schnellbahn were actually connecting the urban areas, the rural areas within the city center. And then with passage of time, after 1972 to 1999, they have introduced the Schnellbahn along with the U-Bahn, the underground bahn. So at that time, till 1999, they have covered the 360 kilometer and 101 train were operating and 136 stations were built. This is the current status of Munich city. The data was retrieved during the 212 from the 200 and from the 2012 study. Now the length of the network is increased to 442 kilometer. 244 trains are operating. 148 stations are there, and 10 lines are operating. Okay. Now we are trying to understand the law of central of places. So the concept that how those cities were taking places, of course, it will expand. So now is a transportation planner. What now you need to understand? The first concept is the more population will increase, the data toward the center will increase. The first. Then, of course, we need to understand density, diversity, land value, as well as the location as well, because that density will be very across or exactly near to the city center. Density, diversity, land value, and location will be different. But within outskirt region, it will again completely different. So now the question is how we can improve our transportation infrastructure so that to provide more accessibility as well as the mobility to the people. This is the concept which was first of all presented in 1933 and then modified by the German philosopher Buchmann in 1983. So that specific that specific theory or law state that settlement simply functioned is the central places, which will provide the economic service to the surrounding area. Uh, and again, so now the Crystal also explained that the large number of settlement will also take very close to one another because according to that first theory, so like majority of the option will take place exactly to the city center, but how the people settlement will now increase because if here is like no place so where people will go, so the people first priority will be to settle somewhere here. When that space will filled, so now they will go to here, so they will never move directly from that place to like here. This is human nature. So this is the law of central of places that people are attracted more towards city center. Why? Because near to that specific city center, all those functions, which is the need or requirement of any human, is almost available near to that central part. How we move from medieval town to the mega city town. First of all, in that specific session, I will give you that how development of those cities started from antique, from the 5th to the 3rd century, and how we ended in the 20th century. Okay. So we will try to understand that how the human settlement were actually taking place, where the public safety were the top priority. And then within 10 to 15th century, things were moving in the framework of the compact structure, so that how we can merge or accommodate more people, and handcraft was also at the top as well. And then within 18th century, a little bit planning and geometric structure was also started for the noble people. So like nobility concept was introduced in the in the 16th century. In the 19th century, with the rapid increase in the population, all the industries were industrial city were actually built. So like within the zoning concept was at that time not introduced, so they built industry where the same people live and the same people actually work. So industrial city make things more fast but uncoordinated in the context of the urban area. Then, after the World War, then a new concept actually come up, which is called garden city, and then green elements, functions, and separation of zoning concept. So all those functions were introduced in the after the World War. We will try to understand those city that how and what actually activate those urban development. Number one, we will also try to understand that how the structure of those cities actually look like, how the skyline were actually built, how different functions were actually there, what kind of transportation system were actually they were using, and then what is the current. Of course, if we are trying to understand the antique, medieval, as well as the absolute city, so those concept that current concept is like now at this situation or like in 20th century. Of course, we don't have the exact example, but at least we can understand it how they were living. So the antique city, as you can see here, that were built between 5th to the 3rd century. Uh, what actually activate the urban development? There were the number one normative vision. Now, what is normative vision? According to that vision, it ensured that well-ordered life of the public safety with the clear spaces actually took part within network and function. Is you can see here, there is a very clear separation, okay, between homes, between streets, between outer area, okay. So those are just concepts. And then the grid, the urban structure were actually built from the grid layout of the street. Uniform block system were also actually used, while while the skyline was differentiated in the altitude from block to block, just to give the visual predominance to the public building. So like public building, temples and theaters, as you can see here, temples, theaters and public building, they were a bit predominant, a bit bold, and they have a very clear skyline, like very clear kind of a symbol, or like they were actually built. Their structure was completely kind of a different. So now, if we try to understand function, how those cities were actually function, so there was the very strict separation between living condition as well as the public areas. So like this is a one typical example of the living condition, and those are the public areas. At that time, there were no such kind of a very major transportation system. Of course, there is the Western network was there. We will also try to understand the different network mechanism as well. But Western were there, which were mainly connected through one major road, each in north and the eastbound. Medieval city, which took place in 10th to 15th century. At that time, those cities were built on the two concept to accommodate more people. And of course, that was a time when there was increase the importance of the trade, of the handcraft, and also the royalty concept was also introduced. Military and defense, is you can see here, those city were actually completely surrounded by a very massive boundary walls. People were actually only living there, and bunkers are what you can call that. The night guard situation were actually built here, so that to protect each and every entrance. The same concept can be seen here as well. So like each block were surrounded with the very big night guard so that to clearly save people. If we try to understand the urban structure, so urban structure where there is a adjustment to the topographic condition as well as the Roman settlement, castles, close and compact structure were actually built. And if you try to understand the skyline, so you can see here in like those figure that there was a visual predominance of the defensive craft tower, town halls, even churches, and also from one story to three-story concept can be seen here. One, two, and three, one, two, one, two, one, two, three. So like you can see and imagine the function as well. If you try to understand the concept of the road, so main road were connected with the arterial road along with the secondary road. So this is it's like main road here and the same road were connected with the arterial road here. And those were the small roads within those, which you call the local road. But if you try to understand the same concept with the current situation, so they have the low capacity of the streets. Okay, so very little and less parking spaces were actually introduced, and of course at that time there was no such well-established public transportation as well. Uh, Concept were a bit became more developed because in 18 between 16 to 18th century, the history taught us that there was the concept of the gain in power, the commander, secularization, foundation of different manufacturers, formation of different official dome, the rented flat concept were actually introduced, the gunpowder concept were introduced, massive kind of a military ammunition concept were introduced. So the defense the requirement were actually increased as compared to the previous concept, what happens till the 10th century. If we try to understand the urban structure, they have introduced, as you can see here, circular concept. They also introduced the polygonal outline, and there the first banks were also introduced. And if you try to understand the skyline, so there were a very clear predominancy position of the representative buildings, such as the people representative, elected peoples, and so on. And if you try to understand function, so of course there were the complete mixture of the function within the same city. If you try to understand transportation, so geometric, regular road, angular road, streets, and network were introduced at that time. Okay, and the this was a time which actually provide the possibility of the rail transportation as well, because most of the thing were based on the dense public network. So there was a kind of a necessity or necessary were discovered or identified that there should be the kind of a transportation, public transportation network, which could facilitate those people. And then in 19th century, industrial city concept were actually introduced because it the very massive increase in the population, and because of the most of the medical improvement, technology also progressed along with the most of the land were converted to start agriculture, migration towards city were also quite increasing, as well as the establishment of the industry which run from the coal and iron ore were also the kind of a limelight of the 19th century. If we try to understand urban structure, there were no such standardization. There were no appearance or like dependence on the kind of a requirement. But if you try to understand skyline, so there was a quite uniform block construction, distribution of the function across the same city center, and the same city center were actually divided to like different city center in order to like build more and more industry. But within industrial city concept, so within that specific center, so the same this was like kind of a center here. Industries were also built, and the people were also living in the same geometry as well. And then garden concept were introduced because due to the industrialization, high density areas without green and open spaces were actually filled, and that was kind of unacceptable, and hygienic standards were also kind of a measured, and there were no clear social segregation or the zoning concept were actually there. So the garden concept were actually introduces. This is the typical example from London, and this is the example from the Germany. This is in 1898, and this was concept in 1907. According to that skyline, so it is a bit detached houses from the low density as well. Parks, different recreational spaces, workplaces were a bit more differentiated. Railway line were also introduced, as you can see here. And so this was the concept of the central city, and this was concept of the garden city. Okay, so this was before, and then it was the kind of extended portion, so that and it also provide the choice to the people as well. For example, if they want to move from that central city to the newly built garden city as well. After World War, the reconstruction take place in a very massive way. So there were like no clear concept was considered, and center where actually function is the common functional space for all activities, and the activator for the urban development was actually housing shortage in cities. So like a lot of places was kind of a destroyed during World War. So fast reconstruction with flat as well as industrial and businesses were actually started. At that time, no topology, no standardization, like so just they want to create more shelter, more houses construction, and just to distribute the urban function. So city with different services were actually working, such as businesses, transportation, different kind of a growing road transportation system concept were actually built in the after the World War. The suburbanization take place where growing floor space is required by the population, as you can see here. This was the central city, then suburban area, and then different satellite city town were actually at that time started. Okay, like now that's next line is here, and next small satellite city is here. So like the same center were actually divided in the multi-centric centers. Urban sprawl took place while American were actually leading the cityscape. People were trying to move from those center to the outskirt in order to find more economical land and also have less population and less pollution as well. So the urban sprawl concept were also increase in the 1960s. Another concept started after the World War, which we called the vision within the zoning in urban development. So that concept started from 1950 till the 1970. Under that concept, there was a very strong reaction to the uncoordinated growth during industrialization, because during industrial city, they were only building centers, small center, and they provide shelter for the people so that they can work and produce more. But at that time when things were actually built and like more mature, so there was a clear need that the foundation of different neighbors such as like community, and also how we can enable political and social quarters. So there should be the separation of different functions. Green and open spaces concept were also started. The high transportation demand because of separation of the function were also introduced. Car-oriented transportation system between different urban cells, because of the urban sprawl actually take place in 1960 as well. So due to low density, development with public transportation was a bit difficult as well. And then there was another era between 1960 to 1970, which is called the urbanity with the density. There was a kind of a clear reaction to the negative impact of the separation of the function. So the concept of the high-rise building were also started. Further expansion of the road network was also considered. Administrative enforcement and involvement within major infrastructure within the major infrastructure project with civil participation was also started. And then urban regeneration was started in 1980. That was a clear reaction to the settlement area, which consist high-rise building, which have a bit negative interception or intercepted negative effect in terms of the aesthetic as well as the social appearance. Urban living, city house concept were also introduced, and there was a concept that how we can connect public spaces with the traffic calming system. So like Tempo 5, Tempo 20, Tempo 30 was also introduced. Between 1990 to 90 to like 2000, so then there was a concept or a new vision, which is called the sustainable city vision. So that specific vision were focusing on the sustainability, economy, ecology, as well as how the more awareness of the ecological should be spread within people, and most of the high-rise building were also demolished. Industries were relocated, and it was also sent to the outskirt. Deconstruction of road were also started. Different kind of a parks, the kind of a mixed land use concept were introduced after 1990 to the 2000. This is not 1900, 1990 to the 2000. This is just one last glance that how city development concept take place in Europe in terms of the socio-economic, and then when the urbanistic vision were introduced. So you can see here, starting from 1940, there were only reconstruction, consolidation, and growth. Okay, but with that specific concept of vision, different things started. From 1960 to 1990, the urban development concept were actually started. The urbanity by density concept started. Traffic oriented city were also started, but after 1990, you can see here, they have realized that mass transportation orientation should be introduced while connected with the sustainable city. This is the concept that how we can learn from our mistake and then we again act smartly. This is the typical concept from the city development concept from the Euro. Thank you very much. If you people have any question, you can get back in the comment section. Thank you. Have a nice day.